What it do, anime crew? What's up, guys? Rufus Nation, Anime Nation, whatever you guys want to call yourselves. I'm back at it with another rant today. This one is for Karta, who asks to rant about the Japanese language. Now, this is something that, of course, I made a video about on my main channel. It didn't do exceptionally well, so unfortunately it hasn't reached that Mr. Beast level notoriety that I was anticipating for it. But it did okay. It did okay, and I was reasonably happy with how the video turned out. I was able to touch on most of the stuff I wanted to regarding the topic of Japanese language in anime and how annoying it is to not speak Japanese but to be an anime fan, and how it's just really bothersome for somebody, at least like me, who's very, very particular about the things that they like, the things that they say are their favorites. I'm very particular about the stuff that I hold in high regard and being able to understand it as thoroughly as possible. So maybe it's just an annoying thing to me, but I'm glad I was able to, on some level, articulate my frustrations in that respect. But I'd like to use this video as an opportunity to delve deeper into the side of the actual language itself, as opposed to strictly how it applies to anime. So the Japanese language is, at least from the perspective of an English speaker, not especially difficult. And I must preface this. I definitely have to preface this by saying I am absolutely at like a foundational level of Japanese understanding. I'm not fluent. I'm not going to pretend to be the expert or the guru on this one. But from where I'm standing, it seems that Japanese isn't an especially difficult language to learn how to speak and understand and conversate in for an English speaker. It's certainly a step up from something like Spanish, but honestly not by a massive amount from what I can tell. The main kicker about Japanese is writing it, because it is exceptionally convoluted, the writing system of Japanese. So there's three alphabets. Kind of four, but there's three alphabets. There's the hiragana and the katakana, which are, the katakana is just for foreign words, and then the hiragana is the, I guess you could say, main alphabet. The hiragana is much like the English alphabet, except it makes a little bit more sense than the English alphabet, in that it is letters that don't mean anything on their own. They don't have any meaning, just like how A doesn't have any meaning other than A, the letter A. They just represent a sound, and the words are comprised of those sounds. So when you want to write a word out, you basically just sound it out in hiragana when you're at like very beginning levels of Japanese. And ideally it would be that simple. But there's like a couple thousand, and this is the craziest thing, is that allegedly nobody even knows how many kanji there are exactly. But there's another alphabet called the Kanji, which is thousands and thousands of characters, some of which are so niche that you will never use them in your life unless you go out of your way to learn them. And they're all, I guess, and I really hope I'm not wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure they're all imported from the Chinese language, but they're not perfect synonyms to their Chinese counterparts. So they often take on the same meanings as the Chinese characters, which they were derived from, but the pronunciation is like hardly even correlated with the symbols themselves. So like you can be able to read and understand a sentence just fine in Japanese, but you'll have no idea how to pronounce it. And so stuff like reading aloud or like transcribing something, hearing it, and then writing it down is exceptionally difficult for an English speaker to learn. And unfortunately, for whatever reason, that's the part I like the most. I've absolutely loved learning kanji more than learning any of the grammar, any of the vocab, any of the practical stuff. I have just loved trying to soak in as much of this infuriatingly overly complicated alphabet as I possibly can. I can't even really call it an alphabet. It really is a very, I don't know about many other languages, but this is a very unique concept from any English counterpart, and I don't know a very graceful way to convey what exactly it is, except for that it is an alphabet of about a bazillion characters, and the sounds they make are not correlated to the meanings of the characters at all, from what I can tell. So maybe that's just me outing myself as like an omega beginner. I will never learn any Japanese newbie, but I love that kanji shit. I love it because it's just fun to memorize. It's just fun to memorize the letters. It's fun to memorize the little, essentially, pictures. Kanji is where all the Japanese calligraphy comes from. People always get like tattoos of Chinese and Japanese characters because a lot of them are just the same characters with different meanings. These beautiful, intricate pieces of calligraphy. And I think they're really cool to learn. I like them visually. I like the idea of knowing them. And I just love the process. And I can essentially entirely attribute my love of the process of learning kanji to the Remembering the Kanji books by James Hasig, which are like the best thing I've ever read in my life. They're so freaking cool. It proposes a methodology for memorizing these characters, which essentially has you envision in your mind a visual story. A story that is much easier to remember than any sort of arbitrary collection of lines on a piece of paper. It has you associate the smaller symbols, which oftentimes comprise these bigger symbols, the more complex ones, as elements. And then with those elements, it guides you along a process of creating stories with those, which are much more memorable than any other way of studying that I've ever seen, at least. I think it's called mnemonics. I've heard a lot of people bash Remembering the Kanji. They say it's not good, probably for reasons I don't understand. Maybe listen to them and not me. But I think it's the coolest thing ever. It's an incredibly satisfying way to learn language. It's genuinely fun. It's fun. It makes learning fun. It accomplishes what school never could. And I think that's absolutely amazing. It's something, maybe I have some sort of an aptitude for learning language, but I don't think I do to any sort of insane extent. And I was able to, when I was like consistently studying, memorize like 25 kanji a day, every day, without dedicating any sort of like crazy amount of time to it. And they did stick with me. They stuck in my head. I thought it was an incredibly efficient way of learning, and it's something that I've tried to apply to other facets of my study, just in like school and stuff, but not really to much success yet. I just think it's such a cool idea that I love trying to shoehorn it into any other facet of my life. But to explain it a little bit more clearly, because I think I kind of just word vomited my way through it that first time, it's essentially a process that has you assign meaning or associate items, objects, thoughts, ideas, nouns, verbs, anything, to these little symbols, which oftentimes comprise the bigger, more complex, difficult to remember symbols that occupy this thousands of letter long alphabet. And it guides you along a process of creating stories with those smaller elements that are much more memorable and let it stick in your mind much more vividly. And this is, at least the first book, is just for memorizing the meanings. I know how to read a ton of stuff. I have absolutely no idea how to pronounce it. And I'm pretty sure that's one of the reasons that people bash the Remembering the Kanji so hard. But at the same time, what better way is there to do it? Because the Remembering the Kanji 2, I believe, is sort of going back and teaching you how to vocalize, read, phonetics. I don't know if finesse is a word, but to speak these kanji. You'll be able to transcribe them, like hear them and then write them down. You'll be able to have a better understanding. You'll be able to have a complete understanding of the kanji and how to use them in any circumstance, ideally, once you finish Remembering the Kanji 2. But it's just tough. Like, people seem to give the books a lot of flack for only teaching one side of the equation because you can't put it into effect right away. But it's just a tough cookie, man. It's just a tough situation to be in, to have to learn both. And, I think this is an absolutely fine solution. I don't think you can really blame the methodology of Remembering the Kanji for it just being really hard as an English speaker to learn the Japanese written language. But yeah, I think I've been rambling on about and sucking off remembering the kanji enough, and yeah, that's about it for this rant. I'm not an expert.